Imagine you've spent years watching people get turned into experiments. You know exactly what the surgery looks like. You know what the conditioning tapes do. You've sat in the room while children came out the other side and stopped recognizing their own names. You've ordered it. You've documented it. You understand the process better than almost anyone in the building. And then one day, the toys find you hiding behind a locked door and they drag you toward the same room. Does Gracie Green know what's about to happen to her? Does she understand in that moment exactly what she's being walked into? Or has she spent so long thinking of the experiments as something that happens to other people that the reality of it doesn't land until it's already too late? These are not the same question. One version of Gracie Green goes into the experiment with full knowledge of what she's becoming. The other version goes in blind. And depending on which one is true, everything about Lily Lovebraids reads differently. So let's actually look at the evidence, because I don't think the game gives us a clean answer. I think it gives us enough to make both possibilities genuinely disturbing. Context. Quick version for anyone who needs it. Gracie Green was the lead counselor in Playtime Company's wellness and integration sector. She appeared in brainwashing videos shown to orphaned children who had been surgically transformed into the Bigger Bodies experiments. The videos were designed to make them forget they had ever been human. Children who didn't respond correctly were sent to the bad toy box, which Gracie ordered, and which was a grinder. She did this for years. During the Hour of Joy in 1995, 3 smiling critters found her hiding and handed her to the prototype. He put her into the Lily Lovebraids body, a design Playtime Co. had proposed as Experiment 1468 but never filled, and then subjected her to her own conditioning program. After 122 days, her identity fractured. What remained became Lily. The question this video is asking is simple. When they took her, did she know what was coming? How the experiments worked? To answer whether Gracie could have known, you first have to understand what the experiments actually involved, because the Bigger Bodies initiative was not one simple procedure. It had multiple stages. The surgical component came first. The human subject was physically altered, organs transferred, the consciousness relocated into the new body. Then came the conditioning, extended psychological treatment designed to suppress the original identity and replace it with the toy persona. Both stages were necessary. The surgery alone wasn't enough to create a functional experiment. The mind had to cooperate, or be broken into cooperating. What Gracie's role tells us is that she understood the second stage deeply. She built the conditioning system. She knew which phrases worked, which repetition cycles were most effective, how long subjects typically held out before the fracture. The 96 isolation day, 122 tape documents her going through that exact process herself. And what's striking is that she recognizes it. Early in the tape, she's watching her own recordings and she knows what they're trying to do. She hasn't forgotten yet. She's watching the mechanism operate on her in real time. So the question isn't whether she eventually understood. She clearly did, at least for the first part of the conditioning. The question is whether she knew before the experiment, before the surgery, before the door came down. Did she walk into this with open eyes? The case that she had no idea. Here's the argument for ignorance, and it's worth taking seriously. Gracie Green was not a scientist. She was not involved in designing the Bigger Bodies themselves. Her role was purely psychological. She handled the subjects after the surgery was done. She almost certainly had detailed knowledge of the conditioning process and at least a general understanding of what the experiments looked like from the outside. But knowing how to break someone's identity after the fact is not the same as understanding what the surgical transformation feels like from the inside. More importantly, her behavior during the Hour of Joy doesn't read like someone who had prepared for this possibility. She hid. She barricaded herself. She called security on the radio, which implies she thought there was still a functioning chain of command that might help her. When she heard Todd get killed on the line, she panicked. None of that suggests a person who had spent time considering that the experiments might one day come back for her. There's also the question of specificity. Knowing that Playtime Company ran experiments is different from knowing that the Lily Lovebraids design existed as an unfilled proposal. The Experiment 1468 documentation describes a body that had been designed but never assigned a candidate. Gracie may have had no idea that design was sitting in a file somewhere, waiting. The prototype was the one who connected those two things. She might not have seen that connection coming at all. If that's true, then the moment they took her, she was improvising. She knew what the conditioning did to other people because she had watched it, but experiencing it herself would have been entirely different from designing it. She would have been going in without a framework for what to expect from the inside. And that's a specific kind of horror, knowing the outcome in the abstract while being completely unprepared for what it actually feels like. The case that she knew more than she admitted. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. Because Gracie wasn't a passive observer of the program. She was embedded in it. She interacted with the subjects after transformation. She watched them lose themselves. She gave them the vocabulary they were supposed to replace their own memories with. She had seen up close what the process produced. She knew what Huggy Wuggy was before and after. She knew what Mommy Longlegs had become. At some point, a person in that position has to confront the question of their own exposure. The experiments weren't entirely secret within Playtime Company, at least not among the higher-ranking employees who actually ran them. Gracie's role was high-ranking enough that she had access to the subjects, the results, and presumably the documentation around the process. Did she ever consider that the same thing could happen to her? Did she think she was protected by her usefulness? That's the version of Gracie that I find most interesting. Not someone who was blindsided, but someone who knew exactly what the company was capable of and chose to believe it would never apply to her. That's a recognizable human psychology. People who work in systems that harm others often maintain the belief that their role insulates them from the consequences. There's one detail in Chapter 5 that pulls in this direction. When the smiling critters broke through her door, Gracie tried to argue that she had been trying to help them. She knew exactly who they were and what she had done to them. That's not the response of someone who had never thought about the ethics of her work. It's the response of someone who had a justification ready, which implies the question had come up before. What 122 days actually tells us. The number 122 is documented as the longest any subject had resisted the conditioning program. Every child who went through it broke faster. The official read is that adults are psychologically more resilient than children, which is probably part of it. But Gracie wasn't just an adult. She was the person who built the program. She understood what each stage was designed to do. She was watching herself in the recordings and recognizing the technique. Could she have been actively resisting in a way the children couldn't because she knew what to look for? If she was resisting deliberately, that implies she went into the conditioning with enough presence of mind to strategize against it, which implies she understood what was happening to her from very early on, which circles back to the question, how much did she know before the surgery? Because if she was already mentally preparing to fight the conditioning while it was happening to her, then she had a framework for this that she brought in from the outside. The tape ends with the fracture. By day 122, she no longer recognizes herself in the recordings. Her name has become abstract. The resistance failed, but the fact that it lasted that long and the fact that the tape captures her watching herself with active recognition of what the videos are trying to do suggests that whatever she knew going in, she used it. It just wasn't enough. The worst version. Here's the reading I keep coming back to, because I think it's the one the game is quietly gesturing at without stating directly. Gracie Green probably didn't know the specifics. She didn't know the Lily Lovebraids design was sitting in an unused proposal file. She didn't know the prototype would be the one to perform the experiment. She didn't know the surgery had already been planned for August 20th, a date that never came because the hour of joy happened first. But she knew the company ran experiments on people. She knew what the conditioning produced. She knew the experiments were irreversible, and she knew she was surrounded by the results of those experiments on the day they came for her. So, when the smiling critters took her at some point in that process, probably very early, she would have understood what was being prepared for her. Not the details, the shape of it, which means the most disturbing possibility isn't that she knew in advance and couldn't stop it, and it isn't that she had no idea until it was too late. It's the space between those two things, that she understood enough to know she should be terrified, but not enough to have any framework for what came next. She had watched the process from outside for years and still couldn't fully prepare for experiencing it herself. The conditioning program she built was more effective on her than she had allowed herself to believe it would be. And then she's Lily. And Lily has no memory of any of it. She carries the vocabulary of the conditioning without knowing why. She keeps a skeleton in a heart-shaped bed without knowing whose it is. She tries for 9 years to earn approval from the entity that destroyed her without knowing what she did to deserve the destruction. Whatever Gracie knew or didn't know when they took her, Lily gets none of it. The knowledge didn't transfer, only the damage did. I don't think the game answers this question cleanly, and I think that's intentional. What Chapter 5 gives you is enough to build a case either way. Enough panic behavior to argue she was caught completely off guard. Enough institutional knowledge to argue she had some idea of what was coming. Enough documented resistance to suggest she went in fighting, and a result that makes both interpretations equally grim. If she didn't know, then she was blindsided by the very system she helped run, which is a specific kind of justice and a specific kind of horror. If she did know, then she spent the time between capture and fracture fully aware of what she was losing, fighting a process she had designed to be unbeatable, and losing anyway. Maybe Gracie Green had no idea what was going to happen to her until it was already done. Maybe she understood every step of it and couldn't stop any of it. Either way, the person who spent years deciding which children were good enough toys ended up in the same place as the ones she sent to the box. She just lasted 122 days, longer than they did.